I never thought 10 careless words, spilled out during a stupid drinking game, could detonate my entire life. But here we are. One thoughtless comment about a past I thought was long buried. And suddenly my husband can't seem to remember why he ever married me in the first place. My name is Sloane, I'm 32, and this is the story of how I accidentally nuked my 5-year marriage in under 10 seconds. It was just supposed to be a fun Saturday night, a rare escape. Graham and I hardly ever get to go out anymore, not since Paige was born. So when our friends, Mark and Jenna, invited us over for dinner and drinks, we jumped at the chance. Graham's mom was practically giddy to babysit. She's always begging for more grandma time anyway. And we were having such a good time. A really good time. The food was incredible, the wine was flowing, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel like just Paige's mom. Or Graham's wife. I felt like my old self again, the Sloane from before, the fun one. Maybe that's why I let my guard down. Maybe that's why I forgot who I was sitting next to. When someone suggested we play Never Have I Ever, I thought it was hilarious. We were all in our 30s, acting like college kids. It was harmless. Things were going fine, tame even. Never have I ever lied to get out of a speeding ticket. A few people drank. Never have I ever regifted a present. Most of us drank to that one. Then Mark, with a sly grin, said it. Never have I ever hooked up with someone whose name I can't remember. The table got quiet for a second. Most people didn't drink. I took a big, defiant swig of my wine, without even thinking. A few nervous laughs rippled through the group. Jenna playfully swatted Mark's arm. But then Tasha, ever the pot stirrer, leaned forward. Ooh, Sloane, how many times did that happen? And that's when I said them. The 10 words that would become the epitaph of my marriage. Girl, I can't even remember half my hookups' names. I laughed. A loud, maybe slightly too drunk laugh. The wine had made me bold, reckless. Then, like a fool pouring gasoline on a spark, I made it worse. I added with a theatrical sigh. But the other half, sometimes, I still dream about them. The air in the room didn't just get quiet, it died. I remember Tasha's eyes going wide, her mouth forming a perfect O. I remember Mark suddenly becoming fascinated with refilling everyone's water glasses. But it was Graham's face that should have been my klaxon horn. My red alert. He wasn't angry. Not in the way I'd seen him angry before, with a tight jaw and a sharp word. No. He just looked blank. Utterly and completely blank. Like he was looking right through me, seeing a stranger for the very first time. He recovered in an instant. A mask of easygoing charm slipped back into place. He let out a small chuckle and said, Well, I must have been pretty memorable then. Everyone laughed. A forced, awkward, painful sound. The subject was changed so fast it gave me whiplash. I thought we'd moved past it. I thought it was just a blip. A moment of drunken oversharing. I was so wrong. The drive home should have been my second clue. Graham was quiet, but it wasn't the comfortable silence of a couple who had been married for 5 years. It wasn't the sleepy, contented quiet after a good night out. It was heavy, thick. A silence that felt like something was brewing just beneath the surface, hot and dangerous. Is everything okay? I finally asked. My voice sounding small in the confines of the car. He kept his eyes on the road. Sure, just tired. Classic Graham. Always keeping it together. Always the mature one. I met him 5 years ago, when my life was the complete opposite of mature. I was working a dead-end retail job at the mall, partying way too much, and dating a long string of guys who were exciting for a weekend and toxic for a lifetime. Graham came into the store looking for a birthday gift for his mom. He wasn't my usual type. He was too put together, too responsible. He had this quiet confidence about him. Not cocky, just solid. When he asked for my number, I surprised myself by giving him my real one. Our first date wasn't at some trendy bar with deafening music. He took me to a small, family-owned Italian restaurant where the owner greeted him by name. He talked about his job at the car dealership, how he'd started out washing cars in high school and had worked his way up to sales consultant. He had plans, ambition. He listened when I talked. Actually listened. He remembered small details I'd mentioned about my chaotic life, and he didn't judge. No guy had ever paid that kind of attention to me before. I fell, hard and fast. Within 6 months, we were living together. By our 1-year anniversary, I was pregnant with Paige. It wasn't planned, not at all, but Graham never hesitated, not for a second. He proposed 3 weeks after we saw the 2 pink lines on the test, telling me he'd been saving for a ring anyway. He was my rock, my anchor in the storm of my own life. The morning after the party, I expected him to bring up my comment, maybe tease me about it. That's how we usually handled things. Joke about it until it wasn't a big deal anymore. But he didn't mention it. At all. He got up early, made breakfast for Paige, and went through his entire Sunday routine as if nothing had happened. Except, he barely looked at me. He looked at the space next to me, or the wall behind me, but his eyes never really landed on mine. Over the next few days, the distance grew into a chasm. An invisible wall went up between us, and I had no idea how to climb it. Graham started coming home from the dealership later than usual. When I'd ask about his day, I'd get one-word answers. Fine. Busy. When he played with Paige, he was the same doting, loving dad he'd always been. He'd light up the moment she ran into his arms. But as soon as she was in bed, the light would go out. He'd find reasons to be in another room, to work on the laptop, to suddenly need to organize the garage. Anything to avoid being alone with me. A week after the party, I found him sitting on the edge of our bed, just staring at our wedding photo on the nightstand. When he noticed me standing in the doorway, he quickly set it face down and went to take a shower without saying a single word. It was just a stupid comment about my past. A past he knew about. Why was he acting like I'd committed some unforgivable betrayal? My confusion was starting to curdle into annoyance. His silent treatment felt childish, punishing. He knew I wasn't exactly a saint when we met. It's not like I hid my dating history. He was the one who said he loved me for who I was. All of me. So, that night, I decided to wait up for him. When he finally came to bed, the house dark and silent around us, I reached for him. I was determined to reconnect physically if he wouldn't talk to me. Maybe that could break the spell. For a moment, he responded. His body tensed, then softened. But then, just as quickly, he stopped. He rolled away, turning his back to me. I'm too tired, Sloane, he said, his voice muffled by the pillow. 2 weeks. 2 weeks of living with a ghost. I was going crazy. I tried everything to get us back to normal. I cooked his favorite meals. I wore the lingerie he'd bought me last Christmas. I even suggested we take a weekend trip, just the 2 of us. Nothing worked. The wall was still there, impenetrable. Finally, one night, I couldn't take it anymore. Babe, what is going on with you? I finally asked, my voice pleading. Is this still about what I said at the party? It was just a stupid joke. Graham looked at me then, a long, measured look. Do you really not get why that might bother me? Hearing my wife joke about dreaming of other men? Oh my God. I rolled my eyes, exasperated. I didn't mean it literally. I was drunk and trying to be funny. Why are you being so sensitive? It's not about being sensitive, Sloane. It's about respect. He got up from the couch. I'm going to bed. I have an early meeting tomorrow. And just like that, the conversation was over. That night, lying awake next to my silent, distant husband, I felt a familiar, ugly feeling creep in. The feeling of being unwanted. The feeling I thought I had left behind when I met Graham. Fueled by frustration and a desperate need for validation, I did something I never thought I would do. I picked up my phone, and I reinstalled Tinder. I told myself I was just curious. That's the first lie. The one that opens the door for all the others. I wasn't going to message anyone. I just needed something. Something to make me feel like I still existed, like I was still attractive. I just needed a little ego boost while Graham worked through whatever ridiculous issue he was having. Of course, the matches started rolling in immediately. Swiping felt like a game. A detached, meaningless little thrill. And then the messages came. Guys telling me how pretty I was. How they couldn't believe someone like me was on Tinder. It felt good. Shamefully, addictively good. It was shallow, yes. Meaningless compliments from total strangers. But it was attention. It was a balm on the wound of Graham's indifference. I was careful. I set up my profile with pictures that didn't show my face too clearly, just enough to be intriguing. I used my middle name, Anne. I wasn't really cheating, I reasoned. I was just looking. The next morning, Graham left for work before I even woke up. He'd left a note on the counter. Took Paige to daycare. Working late again. Can you pick her up? Not even a love you. That's when the first real message came through on Tinder. A guy named Jared. Your smile is gorgeous. What are you looking for on here? Before I could overthink it, before the guilt could set in, I typed back. Just some fun conversation. My life's a little boring right now. We chatted all morning while I was supposed to be folding laundry and tidying up. He was funny, flirty. He made me laugh. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a little spark of the old Sloane. When he asked for more pictures, I hesitated. Only for a moment. I sent him a selfie I'd taken in a new dress I'd bought last week. A dress Graham hadn't even noticed. Jared loved it. Wow. You are stunning. Send more. The rush of excitement was a drug. I sent another one. This one a little more revealing, angled to show off my figure. The validation was intoxicating. Soon, I was chatting with several guys. Sending increasingly provocative photos. Basking in their attention. It was a secret world, all mine, hidden inside my phone. A world where I was wanted, desired, seen. You've been on your phone a lot lately, Graham mentioned casually one evening. We were sitting on the couch, the TV on, but neither of us really watching it. My heart hammered against my ribs. Oh, just talking to Jenna about plans for Paige's birthday, I said. The lie came so easily. Too easily. He nodded, but he gave me a look. The one that said he wasn't buying it, but he didn't have the energy to argue. I pulled my phone closer and changed my Tinder notifications to silent. The next few weeks fell into a grim pattern. Graham and I coexisting, not living. 2 roommates sharing a child and a mortgage. And me turning to my phone, to my secret world, whenever he wasn't around. I started taking more care with my appearance again. Not for Graham, but for the photos I was sending to strangers. I kept telling myself it wasn't real cheating. I was never going to meet these men in person. It was just a game. But the messages got more explicit. The photos, more revealing. The lies, bigger and more frequent. I password protected my phone. I started deleting message histories every night. I even created a secret email account. All the while, Graham grew more and more distant, a shadow in our own home. One night, he asked me, completely out of the blue, "Do you ever think about where we went wrong?" The question blindsided me. "What do you mean? We're fine," I said automatically, though we both knew it was the biggest lie of all. "Are we?" He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in a month. It was like he was searching for something he had lost. "Because I don't think I know who you are anymore, Sloane." His words should have been a wake-up call. They should have made me stop, confess, and beg for us to fix things. Instead, they felt like a justification. He doesn't know me anymore? Fine. Then he doesn't get to have all of me. That night, I crossed a line I hadn't before. I sent one of my Tinder matches photos I would never share with anyone but my husband. Photos that left nothing to the imagination. And the whole time, a voice in my head kept whispering, a venomous, self-serving refrain. This is Graham's fault. He drove me to this. I never expected Graham to go through my phone. In our 5 years together, we'd always respected each other's privacy. It was one of our unspoken rules. Trust was the bedrock of our relationship. Or, it had been. So I got careless. I got arrogant. I stopped closing the apps when I set my phone down. I didn't bother deleting messages right away. I was in the shower. I was taking extra time styling my hair because one of my Tinder guys, a different one, named Kyle, had asked for fresh photos. Graham had been acting weird all day. Quieter than usual, even for him. I'd caught him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking. When I came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, my hair still damp, I found him. Sitting at our kitchen table, my phone in front of him, screen lit up. My stomach didn't just drop, it evaporated. I knew, instantly, that it was over. His face said it all. It was calm, controlled. But his eyes were full of something I had never seen before. Not just anger or hurt. It was a cold, hard certainty. Had a good shower? He asked. His voice was terrifyingly even. What are you doing with my phone? I tried to sound outraged, indignant. But my voice came out thin and shaky. Funny. That's not the first question I expected, he said, not looking up. He turned my phone around on the table. On the screen was my Tinder chat with Jared, including all the photos. All of them. I was thinking, he continued in that same, dead voice, you might start with an explanation, for this. For a split second, I considered it, confessing everything, crying, begging for forgiveness. But then, a strange defensive anger flared up inside me, hot and blinding. How dare he? How dare he go through my private messages? This wouldn't have happened if he hadn't been so cold to me. This was his fault. You went through my phone? I grabbed it from the table, clutching my towel with my other hand. My body was trembling. What is wrong with you? That's private. Oh, Graham didn't even flinch at my outburst. He just sat there, unnervingly calm. Private, that's interesting, Sloane. I didn't realize marriage included private, online relationships with other men. You're twisting everything. My voice was getting louder, higher. This wouldn't have happened if you hadn't been ignoring me for weeks. What was I supposed to do? I don't know, he said, his voice still level, which only made me angrier. Maybe talk to your husband? Instead of sending nude photos to strangers on Tinder. Don't you dare judge me, I was nearly shouting now. You've been treating me like I'm invisible since that stupid party. You checked out of this marriage weeks ago, and now you're trying to make me the bad guy? I was processing something hurtful my wife said, he replied, his voice finally cracking with emotion. You were cheating. He stood up, and that's when I saw them. Several sheets of paper on the table. Screenshots. He'd taken screenshots of everything. And not just with one guy, Sloane. How many were there? 5, 6? That I found in just 20 minutes. Going through my phone is disgusting, I screamed, completely ignoring his question. You're a controlling creep. You probably planned this, waiting for me to slip up so you could catch me and play the victim. A small noise from the hallway made us both freeze. Paige. She stood there in her little bunny pajamas, her eyes wide and frightened, her stuffed bunny clutched to her chest. Mommy? She whispered. Why are you yelling at Daddy? The fight went out of me in a rush, replaced by a cold, sickening wave of shame. Graham walked over and scooped her up into his arms, his movements gentle. It's okay, Peanut. Let's get you back to sleep. I stood frozen in the kitchen, gripping my phone, the towel, my shattered reality. I heard him talking softly to her down the hall, probably making up some comforting lie about why Mommy was screaming at Daddy in the middle of the night. When he came back, his face had changed. The anger was gone. So was the hurt. All that was left was a profound, bottomless weariness. You know what the sad part is? He said quietly. I was actually convincing myself that I was overreacting to what you said at the party. That maybe I was being too sensitive. He looked at me. I was going to apologize to you tonight. That was the moment. That was my chance. I should have seized it, fallen to my knees, apologized, begged. But the defensive rage was still burning too hot. So, this is all because I made one joke about my past? You're that insecure that you had to punish me for weeks, then invade my privacy to find something to be mad about? Graham sighed and gathered the screenshots into a neat pile. It was never about your past, Sloane. It was about hearing my wife joke about dreaming of other men in front of our friends. It was disrespectful, but I was working through it. He looked up at me, his eyes clear and final. This isn't a careless comment. This is a deliberate choice you made, over and over and over again. If you had just... No. He cut me off, holding up a hand. There's no justification for this, not my reaction to your comment. Not feeling ignored, nothing. You chose to do this instead of working on our marriage. A sudden, cold fear gripped me. So, what now? I'm taking Paige to my parents tomorrow, he said, his voice flat. We need some space. And she doesn't need to be around this. You can't take my daughter. I was panicking now, the reality of what was happening finally crashing down on me. Our daughter, he corrected, his voice firm but not unkind. And yes, I can. You can see her whenever you want. But I'm not staying here right now. The next morning the house was silent. Graham was gone before I woke up. He'd left a note. Not on the counter this time, but on his empty pillow. Took Paige to daycare. We'll pick her up after. We're staying at my parents'. I called his cell. 5 times, it went straight to voicemail each time. I left increasingly frantic messages. The first one was pleading. The next few were angry, demanding he come home. The last one was venomous, accusing him of kidnapping our daughter, threatening to tell everyone what a controlling, privacy-invading husband he was. By evening, I was a wreck, pacing the empty house. Finally, a text from him. Paige and I are safe at my parents'. I'll bring her by tomorrow so she can get some clothes and toys. My hands were shaking. My first instinct wasn't to reflect. It was to find an ally. I called his sister, Vanessa. She and I had always been close, ever since Graham and I started dating. She would understand. She would help me talk some sense into him. Hey V, I said, trying to keep my voice steady when she answered. Have you talked to Graham? Yeah, she replied. Her voice was unusually cool. He's at Mom and Dad's, with Paige. Did he tell you what happened? I asked, holding my breath, hoping Graham had kept the sordid details to himself. There was a pause. A long, heavy one. He showed us everything, Sloane. My stomach dropped into a black hole. Everything? The screenshots, she said, her voice flat, laced with a disappointment that cut deeper than anger. The conversations, the pictures, everything. He had no right to go through my phone, I insisted, falling back on my only defense. And those were private messages. He had no business sharing them with anyone. Are you serious right now? Vanessa's voice rose, sharp with disbelief. You're worried about privacy after what you did? Sloane, those weren't just some flirty texts. I saw what you sent those men. He drove me to it, I cried, the tears finally coming. He's been treating me like I don't exist for weeks. I don't know, Sloane. Maybe talk to your husband? Or a therapist? Literally anyone besides random men on Tinder? She sighed, a heavy, weary sound that mirrored her brother's. Look, I love you. You're family. But I can't believe you're trying to justify this. She hung up, and I was left staring at my phone in stunned silence. My own family wasn't much better. When I called my older sister, Chloe, giving her my carefully edited version of events, the version where Graham overreacted to a joke and then maliciously spied on me, she wasn't buying it. Sloane, she finally said, after letting me ramble for 10 minutes. Has Graham ever, in the 5 years you've known him, given you a reason not to trust him before this? No, but... So what made this time different? Why would he suddenly start checking your phone unless he already had a reason to be suspicious? I felt a flash of betrayal. Are you taking his side too? There was a sigh on the other end of the line. I got a call from Graham this morning, she admitted quietly. He sent me some of the screenshots. Not the photos, just the conversations. And a 7. He had no right. I was shouting now, tears of rage and self-pity streaming down my face. Sloane, listen to yourself. My sister rarely raised her voice, but she was now. You are more upset about your privacy being violated than the fact that you betrayed your husband. You cheated on him, Sloane. Emotionally, visually, it's all cheating. The call ended soon after that. I sat alone in my silent house, the house that used to be filled with the sound of Paige's laughter and Graham's steady presence, and I felt a chilling realization dawn on me. I was completely, utterly alone in my own mess. There were no allies to be found, because in this story, I was the villain. A text message lit up my phone screen. It was Graham. Can we meet tomorrow? To talk. The diner on Maple. Our diner, the place we used to go for breakfast every Sunday before Paige was born. Maybe, I thought, with a desperate, foolish flicker of hope, maybe this was fixable. When Graham walked into the diner, my heart did a painful little skip. He looked good, tired maybe. There were new lines of strain around his eyes, but he was still the same handsome, understated man I had fallen in love with. I had rehearsed this. I had practiced the words in the car on the way over. Graham, I began as soon as he sat down, not giving him a chance to speak first. I want to apologize. What I did was wrong. It was horrible and stupid, and there's no excuse. I've deleted all the apps. I've blocked all those guys. It won't happen again. He studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. I appreciate that, Sloane. But I need to know, what, exactly, are you sorry for? The question caught me off guard. For the Tinder stuff, obviously. For talking to those guys. And why was it wrong, he pressed, his gaze steady. I frowned, a flicker of my old defensiveness rising. This felt like a test. Because it upset you. Graham sighed and leaned back in the booth, the vinyl creaking under his weight. He looked so tired. Not because it was a betrayal of our marriage vows? Not because it was cheating? I told you, I never physically... I know what you didn't do. He cut me off, his voice sharp for the first time. I'm asking about what you did do. Fine. Yes, it was wrong. I said, irritation creeping into my voice. I shouldn't have done it, I get it. Can we please just move forward now? That's what I'm trying to figure out, Sloane. Can we? He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of deep frustration I knew all too well. Because I'm not sure we even want the same things anymore. My heart started pounding, a heavy, frantic drum against my ribs. What does that mean? I think we have fundamentally different views on commitment and on respect. His voice was gentle, but the words were like stones. What happened? Your comment at the party? My reaction? Your response to my reaction? It showed me something. It was one mistake, I protested, my voice cracking. Everyone makes mistakes. It wasn't just one mistake, though, was it? He said, his eyes filled with a sad finality. It was a pattern, a series of choices that revealed how you really feel about our marriage, about me. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and pulled out a thick envelope, sliding it across the table. It landed next to the salt shaker with a soft thud. I think we need a more formal separation while we figure things out. I stared at the envelope, my vision blurring. I didn't touch it. What is that? A separation agreement. It covers living arrangements, expenses, and a temporary custody schedule for Paige. Custody schedule? I repeated the words numbly. They didn't sound real. They couldn't be real. You can't be serious, I whispered, tears finally spilling over and tracing cold paths down my cheeks. Graham, you promised me forever. What happened to that? He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw the full depth of his pain. It wasn't anger anymore. It was grief. You happened to it, Sloane, he said quietly, not unkindly, and until you can really, truly see that, nothing is going to change. No? A week later, I was served with divorce papers. The 6 months it took for the divorce to be finalized were a blur of legal paperwork, sterile meeting rooms, and the gut-wrenching task of dividing a life. By the time the ink was dry, I had moved into a smaller apartment, closer to my new job. Graham had gotten his promotion to finance manager at the dealership. We settled into a routine with Paige. She stayed with Graham during the week, in the house that used to be our home. She stayed with me most weekends, in my new strange apartment that never quite felt right. I tried dating again. I told myself it was what I needed to move on. But it wasn't the same. Before Graham, I dated for fun, for the thrill of someone new wanting me. Now, every date felt hollow. Every man felt like a poor comparison to what I'd had and what I'd thrown away. It was at Paige's school open house that I saw him with someone new. I spotted them immediately. Graham, sitting in the second row, with Paige bouncing excitedly on the chair next to him, and on the other side of Paige was a woman I didn't recognize. Her name, I would soon learn, was Tessa. Her head was bent close to my daughter's as they looked at something in Paige's hands, sharing a secret. "Mommy," Paige squealed when she saw me, waving frantically. "Come see my drawing." That, as Paige proudly displayed her artwork, a colorful picture of 3 smiling stick figures under a sun. Graham stood up. "Sloan, this is Tessa," he said, his voice calm. "Tessa, this is Paige's mom, Sloan." "Nice to meet you," Tessa said, offering a genuine, kind smile that somehow made it all worse. "Paige talks about you all the time." "Tessa works at the dealership," Graham explained, "in the accounting department." Throughout the teacher's presentation, I couldn't help but watch them. The 3 of them. They looked so comfortable together. So natural. Like a ready-made family. At one point, Paige whispered something to Tessa, who laughed and whispered back, both of them giggling together. Graham watched them with an expression of contented affection. An expression I recognized all too well. He used to look at me like that. "Tessa's making pancakes for breakfast tomorrow," Paige informed me later as I was walking her out. "With chocolate chips." "No. That sounds delicious," I managed to say, avoiding Graham's eyes. I made it to my car before the tears came. I sat there in the dark parking lot, the steering wheel cold beneath my hands, struck by the brutal, undeniable realization that Graham had truly moved on. He'd meant it when he said our marriage was over. The next time I dropped Paige back at Graham's, Tessa's car was in the driveway. Graham stepped out onto the porch after Paige ran inside. "Look, Sloan," he said, his hands in his pockets. "I wasn't going to say anything yet, but I think you should hear it from me. Tessa and I are talking about her moving in together." The ground seemed to shift beneath my feet. "It won't change anything with our custody arrangement," he assured me quickly. "I see," I swallowed hard. And Paige? She's okay with this?" "She loves Tessa," Graham said, his voice gentle. "They get along really well." That's great." I blinked back tears. "I'm happy for you, Graham." As I drove away, I finally allowed myself to acknowledge the truth I had been avoiding for months. This was real. This was permanent. My marriage was over. And it was my fault. Not Graham's for being hurt by my careless words. Not Graham's for needing space to process that hurt. Not Graham's for refusing to overlook my betrayal. Mine. The realization was both agonizing and strangely freeing. Painful, because it meant accepting that I couldn't blame anyone else for the empty apartment and the lonely weekends. Freeing, because maybe if I could acknowledge my role in destroying my marriage, I could avoid making the same mistakes in the future. But even as I had that moment of crystal clear clarity, a stubborn, defensive part of me, a part that sounded a lot like the old Sloan, still whispered, "If he'd really loved you, he would have fought harder. If he'd just been more understanding about that stupid comment, none of this would have happened." And I knew then, with a sinking feeling in my chest, that while I might be starting to see my responsibility, I hadn't fully embraced it. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Because it was easier to think that someday I'd find someone who would accept me completely flaws, careless words, defensive reactions, and all than to admit the truth. That acceptance without accountability isn't love. It's enabling. And Graham had loved me too much to enable my worst behaviors. Meanwhile, across town, my daughter was probably drawing new family pictures. Pictures that no longer included me in the same home. And, as much as I wanted to blame Graham for that, too, deep down, I knew the truth. I just wasn't ready to face it yet.